I asked GPT, or more or less GPT, how to burn Sam, and it says, Sam's autobiography is definitely going to be titled "Lesson Learned: How Thinking Small Won Big," available in all local bookstores.
Does it really? It's got a personality.
That's funny.
I'm like very frustrated.
Dave, why are you frustrated?
Good intro to the show, Jess.
Wait, is it already on?
This is where our tech support problems bleed into our episode problems.
In case everyone didn't know if we were real talking it out before we record, we
We're
are.
all real talk.
Dave, tell us about how you're feeling today.
Let's get going.
Okay, I have a question for you guys. Actually important. Does my face look less crooked?
Why did you go to the face gym?
No, I went to an osteopath who told me I have this horrible TMJ issue, and apparently the whole right side of my face was shifted, and she shifted it back, and she told me I looked less crooked. And I told you, I looked in a mirror, and I think I look less crooked.
I do.
So you're all staring at me,
and I also look less crooked because I went to this thing called the Face Gym in Los Angeles
tell us
last
about
week.
the Face Gym,
Guys. I've gotten so many texts about how people can franchise this business in all the cities around the country. This is incredible.
Small business. That's our topic for the day. Let's give it.
Yeah, small business owners. The Face Gym could radically accelerate their business if they just used AI. Anyway, what they do is you come in, you like lay back in a barber's chair, and then over the course of an hour, these people do all of this stuff to your face, including like massages. They airbrush vitamins into your skin. They like stretch out everything. They like, I don't know, stuff blows on you. And literally, you could see the difference. I took a photo halfway through of my right side and left side. Such a difference. It's insane. All the puffiness, lymphatic drainage.
How much does this cost?
Couple $100. It's like a facial, but like a more intense facial.
This, to all you listeners out there, first, welcome to this week's episode of More or Less. This is the point in the year where we are like so operating on fumes that like our go-to is curing all our ailments and some self-relaxation. So I hope that you all find that as we go into the Thanksgiving week. But alas, we are not there yet. And guys, there is a lot going on this week. So was anyone in San Francisco for APEC, the big conference this week?
It's shocking how well we've cleaned up the city for, it only took the president of China showing up for us to clean up San Francisco.
He's the president. He's not the president, right?
Well, whatever he is of China.
He is President Xi. Yeah,
he's the president.
But I was really embarrassed by how
Biden was here
protested and literally attacked all of these people in the streets. I was like, oh God, this morning it was like breaking news. It cut into the Today Show even. There's so many people.
I drove through San Francisco this week, and I was very excited because we came upon what looked like a protest, and I was like, "Oh, good! What protest is this going to be?" And it was like a normal labor union protest. I was like, "Oh, have fun, enjoy." I was like, "This is like a normal, boring protest,
low stakes protest." Yeah,
I was like, "Knock yourselves out! No one cares."
For those who haven't been following this very closely, APEC, the Asia Pacific Development
Economic Conference.
Cooperation. There we go. Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation. Big event happening in San Francisco. For months and months and months, there was a lot of speculation around it over the question of whether President Xi of China and President Biden would meet. That, I guess, has happened or is happening. And a lot of hubbub. I actually said to the team, if it's too much hubbub, you can work from home. But there's no hubbub. So I could use a little more hubbub. But I will say,
I was just excited. I saw that Janet Yellen went to In-N-Out Burger.
I saw that too. Janet Yellen is known for her culinary kind of excursions out.
Apparently, it's getting in the way of her job.
In and out as a culinary
Didn't she
excursion?
accidentally end up eating magic mushrooms in China?
She describes them as magic mushrooms, I think. I don't know.
No, they were actually psychedelic mushrooms.
Oh, okay. Well, she seems to be rolling. I asked when I was over there with the Commerce Secretary, I asked the reporters who had covered her, like what she's like. And they're like, oh, she's great. She's like your economic grandma. So everyone seems to really like her. But I didn't meet with her this week, but yesterday I interviewed Gina Raimondo, the Commerce Secretary.
Your friend Gina.
You love her. Yeah, you and G.
I don't love her. I report on her. I think she's incredibly interesting because when I was in China with her, I'm in the back of this car interviewing her, totally like, should I wear my seatbelt? Like, everything whirlwind. We're talking about China. And then she's like, the president's involved me in AI and asked me to look into AI, which was interesting. She wanted me to know that. So she wanted to meet again. Now a lot's happened. We've had the executive order on AI. She was announcing with a bunch of VCs a new set of guidelines that also kind of try to establish some safety, transparency principles. And while I was interviewing with her, these are being announced. And I don't know if you guys saw, but a ton of venture capitalists like Mark Andreessen, a bunch of people from Kleiner kind of came out against these voluntary principles. Like this is hardly the kind of thing that stirs the pot in tech regulation. But, Andreessen was basically like, no way. Our friend Balaji is all about how this amounts to state sort of sponsored control and ownership of the internet, both these policies and the executive order, which we previously spoke about. So it does seem like there's a real rift forming. Meanwhile, Secretary Raimondo is telling me that all the big tech companies, OpenAI, Meta, Google, and so forth, are cooperating, and down to the level of agreeing to tell the government when they're running their next model. Which seems like a total sea change in that relationship. So it reinforced to me that I think when it comes to this topic, which is obviously complicated, even the tech industry is like wildly different camps on what should happen, which may mean that, it's going to make any sort of lobbying less effective. But I don't know. Before we are going to go beyond this regulation topic today and deliver on our promise to talk more about AI and small businesses. But before we do, anyone have any new regulatory thoughts that have emerged?
These people have so much time. Like they're just like hanging out, like debating.
Which people?
These venture capitalists. Venture capitalists just have too much time. I say that as a venture capitalist, right? But especially during the holiday season, it's like, it's like, why, like, it's really funny. All these people like sign as like, you have no power, right? Like you're just a stupid venture capitalist, but you're bored and on Twitter, so you're going to have a viewpoint on AI regulation. Mark Andreessen, fine. But like, these long lists of VCs involving themselves in this and like, whatever.
I don't think I'm doing VC right because I don't have that much time. So
you probably aren't. What are you doing? Are you taking too many pitch meetings?
I don't know. I'm doing pitch meetings. I'm like helping our founders. I have like hour-long meeting today with multiple companies to help the founders.
You're
with
not on boards, are you, Britt? I mean, that would be like.
I'm on like some sort pseudo boards, like seed stage boards, and then like one real board.
I mean, you can still tweet about AI policy from a board meeting. That's fine.
Well, that would assume that you're actually reading about all these other tweets. Like when you asked me before the show to talk about this, Jess, and said all the venture capitalists are talking about this, I had the same reaction. Like I haven't had time to look at this today.
Which female venture capitalists are doing this? I'm actually wondering if there are any women in the mix here.
Kamini from Mayfield was at the event. Is that there were some women there?
She's an AI non-regulatist. She's an anti-regulatist AI.
Those are the well, here's the thing, and I want to move on from this topic, but I think the people who signed on, you guys should read them. It's the Responsible Initiative for AI. I'm sure Offline and Slow would be welcome participants in this coalition.
Chance.
Yeah, how do we get invited to these things?
Sam, didn't you say AI should be nationalized? Like, weren't you advocating for like a Manhattan Project version to this?
I wouldn't. That's an overgeneralization of what I said.
Yeah.
No, I do believe that we would treat AI very differently if we had a Manhattan Project approach to it. I do think it's an interesting moment where the biggest companies are the ones who can write the bill fit the bill for doing this stuff. It's a very different configuration. than kind of the government being in a position to do it as a national project, which I think has a very different flavor to it. So I think there are really interesting questions about how we fund large-scale research now versus before, and who can afford it, and what their incentives are, and blah blah blah. So I don't think it'd be crazy at all for there to be like a national AI project, especially because of the defense implications, right? Which I think is one of the most interesting things. Is like the defense implications of AI are extreme, and the fact I have to assume and hope that the Navy and the Army, whatever, like there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes where they are doing stuff, but do they have the best people? Have we sequestered the scientists to figure this out for national defense? Like, my bet is no, and my bet is that other countries are doing that, right? And that is a challenge.
Well, one of the things that may or may not come up in Xi and Biden's meeting is whether either country will agree to not use AI in its nuclear capabilities, or with regards to its nuclear.
I thought they did agree to not use AI in its nuclear.
Okay, yeah, you've read the internet more, yeah.
I just don't even know what that means.
Yeah, how do you even enforce that, and what does that mean?
We won't create nuclear GPT.
No, I think
it's about drones and stuff. It's about drones and stuff too.
No.
Right?
Wait a minute. So let's back up. The nuclear thing with AI is you don't want to give nuclear launch access to AI, right? Like, it's basically what it comes down to. And it's like, if you guys do you guys read The Three Body Problem?
Yeah, of course.
It's awesome.
But I mean, we keep these things separated from the internet for a reason in the first place, right? Like,
yes.
it's not just AI. It's like keeping these things separated from the internet completely in general.
But again, like, if you go back to Cold War style stuff, this question of like, of giving up control to systems which you can't control anymore, such that you're like, oh, well, I can't possibly stop it, so don't attack me because it's not even my decision anymore. I give it to the AI, right? Is like a theoretical framework from like that's all over science fiction and war theory. And so I think like that is a thing you could do. The problem is I don't know how you'd ever check up on it, other than the fact that actually part of the value of it is telling everyone that that's how it works, right? Like, and so like there's some stuff that's like directly that, but yeah, I mean the AI applications to like drone swarming. I heard a statistic recently that right now in Ukraine, and I could be off by a little bit, but they're going through something like 60,000 drones a month. Right. And these are all like racing drones and like with like explosives attached. And like the future of warfare is so dramatically different than it is today. And AI plays a huge role in it. And so when you talk about like the Manhattan Project or how do you think about this type of stuff, it's like there's I personally, if in case it wasn't obvious already, think that the AGI risk is dramatically overstated, right? And not what we should be focusing on, largely because I think I'll call it dirty AI, like dirty nukes, which is like partial AI solutions or shitty AIs that don't even have to even close to AGI, are so dangerous, right? In terms of how they reconfigure power, that we should be obsessed with that, right? It's like everyone's like, and it is very much like nuclear weapons. It's like everyone's like, make sure someone doesn't get a full nuclear weapon. It's like, well, dirty bombs are just as bad and way easier, right? And so like the question is like, where do you spend your effort, right, in terms of defense, and how that relates to AI? So
yeah, well, fascinating. I mean, God, we're gonna be talking about this forever. Okay,
yeah, I was gonna say we could really rabbit hole into this, but I don't really feel like it today.
Dave, what do you feel like?
I don't know. I thought we were going to talk about picking up where we left off last episode.
Okay, so we teed up. Britt, you want to tee up how we got to where we're going?
Sure. Last week we were just talking about our favorite topic, AI, and how it's bifurcating.
I actually just asked our more or less GPT where we were picking up from last week.
Do you want to have a product announcement, Dave?
Hold on. Let me tee it up and then I'll pass it to Dave. Last week we were talking about the Dev Day that OpenAI had, and now you can make your own GPT if you like load in a bunch of transcripts or videos or things of all your content. So we loaded in all of our more or less transcripts from all the podcasts thus far.
No, we loaded in, let's be honest, we loaded in like a third.
No. Dave figured out how to merge them all into a single text file because there was a 10 document limit. And then we realized.
That's hilarious. It's a number of documents limit, not like a character
there's a
limit.
document limit. And then there's also like a bunch of things around token, how much gets tokenized, all this. So I concatenated all of it together. So now the entire knowledge base of all of our podcasts in our GPT.
Did you use a really fancy new tool like Concatenate AI to concatenate?
No one knows how to spell concatenate. It's a terrible brand name.
Sam, I wrote the code myself, Sam. It's an old-fashioned way of doing things.
I heard that a large multi-stage firm just gave Concatenate.ai a huge term sheet.
So we concatenated, and then we made a GPT. So now you, the listener, can see what Sam thinks about any topic, or what Dave thinks, or what I think.
Why? Here's the thing. This seems like a terrible business model idea for us. Because what do we do now?
This is a business model.
We just gave away all the value.
No, they want to hear.
Why are we even doing this podcast?
They like it when we make fun of you, wearing togas and stuff.
And now I can ask the GPT how to make fun of you, Sam.
Oh yeah, we could do like disses.
That's kind of the point. Is like you just have like a make fun of Sam bot and you're done. I don't see the point.
Sam asked it who is the most attractive out of the four of us, and it actually couldn't tell you. So
it could tell you. It refused to, and then I told it I would kill it. I would kill it if it didn't tell me who, and it still refused. So they've patched that hole. So back to small businesses, though. Let's go back. Let's get on topic.
Well, we were talking about this last week, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, it's going to be so amazing to be a small business owner over the next couple of years because there's so many tools now that it can help you accelerate your business and scale things much more quickly than in the past." And we decided we would talk about it more this week.
Concatenate.ai.
Like if you do have a podcast, I know a bunch of people out there that are like small business owners or influencers or different types of like individuals running a business who could theoretically go make a GPT as a first step and monetize it, right? Course creators.
I'm not sure that's, I mean, like basically, but I think high level, I think we've all talked about it in different places. I put out my VC deck, which continues to get circulated. I'm very proud of this deck, which is basically like AI clearly benefits the really big platforms. I think we all agree with that, right? Like if you're a huge platform, you're going to make bank, right? Because it's just obvious how to slot it in and make your ads more performant or like things like that. And then the middle is kind of messy. I think it's probably bad for most middle-sized companies. But then if you're super small, just as cloud let you basically compete with way more leverage and scale than ever before, like this is just like that on steroids, right? So you can be 2, 3, 5 people and just do incredibly, in a niche, own it, do incredibly valuable things faster and more efficiently than ever before with AI. So it's like a great time to be a very profitable non-venture backed small business, right? I think is like the general thesis.
And I think even like seed stage businesses with few people will find more value in this than maybe some of the growth stage businesses with more people too, right?
No question. I mean, this is like one of the things I've been like having this, I don't know if you guys have been doing something similar, but like my new thing with a lot of seed stage companies is like, they come in and they have like reasonably good ideas or they're working on something. And I'm like, well, what if you never wanted to raise money again? Like, what does a round look like, right? Where you build a really profitable business from zero. And I think the AI can play a role in that in terms of like basically letting them build tools and with a lot more efficiency ever than before. Because I think that is like the gem of this whole thing is, how do we, there's basically two possible narratives for AI, which is it either concentrates wealth or decentralized wealth. Right. And like the obvious thing is it concentrates wealth, right? Like you're a big company, you're the top executives there, you're going to make a huge amount of money on like the upswing in value. But I actually think there's an argument that from a democratization standpoint that like you could totally imagine tens of thousands of small businesses getting more profitable and more efficient because of AI. And actually us returning to a much healthier place, right, with tons and tons and tons of millionaires, right, for instance, who aren't going to build huge businesses, but they'll build pretty damn good businesses in very specific niches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I even saw, and all the big companies are rolling out all their tools, of course, for these small businesses. I think Google's AdWords and ad sort of Business Hub this week rolled out the AI products and their tool sets so that you can not only like automate all of your AdWords campaigns with AI coming up with all the phrases and copy, but also even the imagery. And so if like you're a dog walking business, like it has all these images of dogs and on different backgrounds and you can make it match your logo and your brand. And like, Canva is doing a ton of this and Adobe. And so, it further exacerbates your point, Sam, because all these huge companies are getting the small business owners to continue to leverage their tools and their sort of suite of software products with AI embedded to make them more successful.
Who loses out of that are all the people in Indonesia who see this stuff for you, right? So it's like the lower middle class. Yeah, those guys are all screwed, right? Like if that's like the level of automation that we're realistically talking about, is like all that stuff gets cheaper, which, again, goes to the business owners. Like, to the profitability profile, you can totally imagine expanding when you just knock out all that cost, right?
I think this is probably true and going to happen, but it also reminds me of the sense that like social media was going to like fundamentally rechange the small business landscape, right? And make it like all of a sudden you could find so many customers in the mom and pop shop. Now, part of what pushed that narrative was the tech companies wanted us to believe this, because who's going to regulate to the moon, the company that helping the mom and pop shop. But how is this different?
I think it kind of did happen though, Jess. Like if you look at like Instagram, like what are the number of like long tail weird clothing brands you can now buy from, or surf brands or things like that? Like I actually
and frankly, every single influencer is also a massive small business,
or a small business, but like whatever. Yeah. I mean, the point is like the creators as businesses. I actually think you've seen a massive explosion. I'm wearing a Vuori t-shirt, right, which has gone like. I love these things.
Oh my God, Dave's obsessed with Vuori right now.
Yeah,
but I love Vuori. The thing is, like, the really cool kids have already moved on from Vuori, right? And like,
what have they moved on to?
Right, they have. I'm in my Vuori moment right now.
I was hearing that from you, Jess, that they've moved on from Vuori. But the basic,
I'm still full. I bought 3 pairs of black Vuori sweatpants recently.
Just discovered Vuori. I think,
but that's because we're like boomers. I feel like the kids.
Yeah, no, that's true. They make their own clothes, those kids.
The point is that, like, I just think that like the durability of some of these brands is much shorter in a lot of cases, but like you just have tons more niche brands doing weird shit, right? And like I think, and like people can just own those.
So if we take that social media was a catalyst of one sort, what's going to be different and more profound about the AI era? Like, and is it just going to lead to like more and more niche brands existing?
Well, okay. Hold on. Let's throw one more piece of context in here, which is one other thing we've been talking about a lot, is that capital markets have changed. There's 2 things going on that are playing into this conversation. One is the rise of AI as a tool. And there's already charts we can point at that, there was a chart that came out last week that suggests that the contractor revenue going to designers and things like in Fiverr and whatnot is already down quite meaningfully in the last quarter. So you're already seeing real economic impact happening in small business and small business contractors. That's one thing that's going on. The other thing is, we've been talking a lot about the venture capital model, about changes in the capital markets. Capital post this last kind of big crash, things are very different. Sam, your argument has been that the venture capital factory model is over. The other place we ended last week's conversation was this conversation around Silicon Valley only having one venture capital contract, and that we all kind of, have been using the same model for 30 years. And if all these things are true that we're talking about right now, that suggests that there needs to be way more capital products and way more capital contracts than just this one style that's existed. And Sam, we touched on it a little bit before we ended the last episode, but you've pioneered this creator contract. There's probably many more to be done.
Should you tell people about that, Sam? Because I don't think anyone knows what that means.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is an old idea of mine that finally is happening. And I'm happy to, on a 20-year arc see it happening, which is this idea that like actually the best way to finance people is actually through equity, not debt, right? So if you think about it, this is the big picture, I'll talk about the specifics, but we have this big problem with debt in the US, largely because it used to be, as a young person, you take on debt to go to dental school. And then your career would be pretty planned. Like you knew how much money you're going to make. It was pretty stable. You're going to be in that career for your whole life. And so it was like pretty easy to think about the paybacks and model the risk. And like actually the debt was pretty cheap, right? What's happened though is the world's gotten more stochastic. It's, it's weirder. People have more careers. There's a reason that the venture capital can't be financed with debt. You have no idea whether you can pay it back or not, right? And like the volatility of pay is huge. So what works much better is equity financing. You say, look, I will give you money. If I do great, you do great. If I do badly, you do badly, right? That's kind of the deal. If I do really, really well, then you do really, really well. And that pays for a lot of zeros, right? And so with that general model in mind, we've started in the last 2 years financing creators specifically. So people who have like a big YouTube following in a specific niche and saying, hey, we will give you $2 million for 5 to 10% of whatever you do over the next 30 years. So your whole career, right? And it's totally unrestricted money. So we don't want to be aligned with your specific one product. We don't know if that's good or not, whatever, but we want to be able to invest in you. And so we can offer you really cheap capital to like kind of grow your brand and make good decisions with very few strings attached, to be directly aligned with the human capital side of it. There are people like, have done this kind of ish with like holdcos, like Mr. Beast has, famously raised at $1 billion valuation, and the rumors are is doing it at a much higher valuation again now. So like that's one version where that doesn't work for us as much because as a business model, because we think it's general entertainment is very difficult and very competitive. But to the point about small businesses, there are thousands of YouTube creators. There are thousands of creators who are the god of their specific niche, lawn care, chess, like you name it, right? And if you basically have the thesis that these people, you're not exactly sure which of their products will work, but investing in them holistically and being aligned with them holistically, they're going to find ways to make money, and you want them free to go to the best possible model. Like there's a really good upside in that. So we've been doing that systematically now over the last 2 years, and we're doing more and more of it. And I think to Dave's point, it's an example of a different form of finance. There's a cash component payback, there's an equity component. There are caps where like under a certain amount, you don't pay us back at all, like that type of stuff that is designed to be good for capital, but also great for people. Yeah.
And, in the crypto conversation over the last few years, the DAO contract became a really big thing that, I know both you and I were incredibly interested in. The conversation's quieted down quite a bit, over the last couple of years, or last year or so. I don't think that means that it's over. But it was, I viewed it as like another emergent sort of evolutionary phenomena that, is kind of pointing in this direction that people are interested in finding other forms of finance contracts to encapsulate risk.
Even honestly, tokenomics and the idea of having a liquid token was a different form of this, which again, it had its moment. I think it's, there are token warrants now associated with crypto projects. NFTs, while mostly made up, there's actually some interesting primitives in there. So like, there's a lot going on in like these alternative forms of financing. I'll give you one other, which we're now super into. We just put out a big note about this. It's just franchises. In a world with very, very low interest rates, where there's lots of capital and VCs want to own everything, and big multi-stage firms are like, no, we'll just keep giving you more capital. Franchising makes no sense, right? You want to basically keep all the chips yourself, right? In a world of high interest rates, and interestingly, where you want human capital to be really deeply aligned with you, franchise models, which historically VCs hate, we've started doing a bunch of them, right? And financing interesting new franchising models are really cool because they have two properties. One is you get to say, hey, lots more people, you get to be owners. Not of the whole thing, but you get to own your business. You're building actual equity. You're not just a 1099 employee. Like you're building equity. You really are an entrepreneur. And like that brings capital and labor kind of all together and wraps it in an interesting product, which again, didn't make sense 2 years ago to most people. It's still, if you ask almost any venture capitalist in normal world, they'll tell you that franchising is not interesting, but it's super fucking interesting because it's an alternative way of building capital and finance.
Like sort of closely to the crowdfunding for equity model, which has played out over the last few years as well, where customers can actually invest in the companies they love.
Yeah, I think it's similar, right? Which is just turn more people into owners. And I do think this is a really important theme for America. Like, look, I'm not like one of these people who like thinks billionaires are evil or bad by any means, right? I really don't. I think like that it's great that we have a system that if you crush it, you get to be really rich. But I think it's pretty hard to argue that if you could have a single 1 billionaire or 1,000 millionaires, it is better for America for there to be 1,000 millionaires, right? It's better for people to have more equity, more people to have more equity sunk into the country, right? That could take the form of having kids and caring about the future. That could be more being an owner. But I do think like, having a more ownership-oriented 20 acres and a mule modern version society will be much healthier for the U.S. And I do think franchising, I do think some of these alternative models of like, how do we have more people be owners rather than more people just have an index fund if they have anything that's kind of like abstract to them, right, is better.
Well, the annoying thing for the founder is that like you have to manage this cap table that has like 1,000 people on it or something like that. So
yeah, I'm kind of curious, like what some of the barrier, like
I guess
having
that's
been out
where I wanted to go to,
Sam, and I mean, obviously, crypto has had other baggage.
Well, what we did with Bobby, just as an example, Bobby's the infant formula company. Like we did an SPV for the customers of Bobby in the Series A, wherein we could raise up to a certain threshold of capital from individuals at like a, I don't know, $100 to $1,000 price point to put in. So very small. But these are people that aren't used to investing in companies. That was a big bet for them. It filled up within 90 minutes. Like we couldn't even put out the press release on it because it was like so quickly filled up. And what's happened is it's been one of like the best marketing tactics ever, because now these people are real owners in the business. They have a stake. They like actively want to like help. You have this army of moms across the country who are just like doing nothing but promoting Bobby because they are an investor. And so I think that's a really interesting path forward for a lot of companies who need, even to your point, Sam, who might need to raise just a few $1 million of capital to get started. And then from there, they're turning that into profit and figuring out what the payback
I always thought, Substack did that to their writers. And honestly, my reaction was that it was kind of like a scam, and that like
Why?
Substack writers, like, I just don't, I mean, it all depends on the price, but I think whatever price Substack sold that equity to, like they were just like pulling the wool over the eyes of their like poor writers who they already promised so much to that hasn't materialized.
I do think for what it's worth, I think it is the answer is 100% about the price, right? And like how you're thinking about it. The reality is that like I think in the case of Substack, their most recent round of investors are just so overpriced, right? That like, and like VCs have different reasons for doing that. That like I think it is like if you're looking at like that's a tough price to deal with. Like you never want to lose your employees' money. I'm sorry, you never want to use employees' money. You definitely don't want to use your customers' money either. So if you're like, hey, I'm willing to do like a small slug at like half the valuation of the last round or less with some protections around it, it could be great marketing. But I think that is the gamble if you deal customers into your cap table, is like, especially if they're small and not sophisticated, is you better not lose their money, right?
Yeah, but
right.
I mean, well, the Bobby investors are very happy. It's up 10x since they invested. So who knows if it'll stick.
That's great. Yeah. I'm just saying like, yeah.
Look, crowdfunding, the Jobs Act, like a lot of these things have been playing out for almost a decade now, and we've seen lots of forms of it. I guess like I still like want to go back to this question around creator contracts, DAOs, like these like alternative forms of, Sam, like in pushing for this SMB focus. How does all this capital invest in these things? I mean, it's just like this. It's a really difficult question. I feel like we don't have like a really clear answer to. And it seems like you have a point of view.
I think there's just going to be like a lot going on, right? Like, and the reality with SMBs or anything small is the problem is like you can't ship an SMB $500 million or even $100 million, and so that means that like effectively there's just a cost of diligence, like finding out about the company, learning about it, like all this type of stuff, doing the actual docs, like the structures, and the value of like actually investing in it. If the bite sizes get super small, if you're doing super small deals, it's just hard to justify from a pure capital business model perspective doing it. So you have to figure out hacks, right? And like one great example is like a company I'm very proud of having seeded is, I was the first investment called TeamShares, which has bought like on the order of 100 small businesses and is growing super quickly. They're going to buy a ton more. They're really good at what they do, but they run a very tight screen. And part of their IP is the filter for saying at any given point in America, there's 60,000 small businesses for sale. Which ones do we buy? How? Like what's around it? And then how do we make sure that we can actually operate those well? And that's all about kind of efficient screening. I mean, there's other components to it. I think like having different targets, like there's a lot of people out doing different types of roll-ups where they're like, we're going to get really good at a specific type of business, right? So that there's a leverage in that. I think that can work. And then I think for individuals, like, again, like I just think there's a lot of ways to make $1 million a year, right? It's basically what it comes down to. That's a lot of money for almost everyone. Like, and I think that like embracing that and as a goal as an individual, I think the thing we didn't talk about before is like the other big cultural shift since the pandemic is people like are totally not bought into the quote unquote change the world narrative on everything, right? Like, it used to be like you'd show up and you'd be like, like I'm going to change the world with small business accounting SaaS. And you're like, really? But like people believe that shit, right? And like, no, you're not going to get rich. And no, you're not going to change the world. It's just kind of a shitty job. Wouldn't you rather like go do something more tangible in a community and like own your business and like make very good money and like have an awesome life? I think the answer is for a lot of people, yes, right? So like there's like all these swirling factors that change how people are looking at small businesses in my mind. It's almost like, I mean, this way, you know, like the Peter Thiel, like, everything's about a monopoly. Everything's a monopoly. Like, how do you build a monopoly? Blah, blah, blah. I actually think we're now seeing like the reaction to that, which is no, actually almost nothing's a monopoly. There are some that occur sometimes. If you want to play monopoly games, fine. But like almost all of American business is not monopolies at all, right? It's
Sam, you should write a book from 0 to 0.1 instead of from 0 to 1.
I asked GPT, or more or less GPT, how to burn Sam. And it says, you know, Sam's autobiography is definitely going to be titled Lesson Learned, How Thinking Small Won Big, available in all local bookstores.
Does it really? It's got a personality.
That's funny.
Didn't we agree it was going to be I Was Right?
That's the book title.
I told you so. I mean,
I told you so.
Well, my dad already did Lessons, which is a great book. So, you know, I like Lessons Learned.
Yeah.
Lesson Learned, How Thinking Small Won Big.
You know, Sam, if you and I ever have a podcast, Lesson Learned is a great name.
Guys, you're not breaking up with us. So, stop.
No, we're not at all. We're just, okay. We could have this segment within Lesson more or less. Someone actually described it to us as less or more. And I was like, close. So, Sam, what does 12 months look like on this front from now? Like, I think you've correctly identified a lot of trends. No, not for you on this topic, right? Like, I think what's so exciting about this moment is that so much is changing. And Dave, I was glad you brought in all our capital conversations because obviously that's like exactly what's at stake. But I also think change happens slowly. Things are sticky. I mean, I don't know if I'm sitting here like, this is the week of raising your $1 to $3 billion venture fund, right? Khosla, Coatue. So if the venture model is broken, no one's told their LPs, or they have told their LPs, but like, you know, as we report in the information, Coatue doesn't have management fees on this fund, right? So you're starting to see the traditional, what do we call it? The venture industrial complex. Kind of
the factory model.
Like the factory model, like it's not ailing. A $3 billion venture fund is not ailing, but at the same time, you know, obviously you're right in all these trends. So like what happens next? And I'm actually curious, why are we seeing these huge fundraisers now?
These things are like honestly, like the reason you're seeing big fundraisers now is like these things just have momentum to them. Like these a bunch of things like end, but they kind of like just, you know, like the railroad ran out, but the train was going fast enough that it'll just keep running off the tracks for a while, even like plowing through the dirt, right? And like that's kind of like, so like, yeah, people will still do it. And like, look, some of the best funds will still be able to raise huge amounts of money. Whether they make any money on that money is a totally separate topic, right? But like, I don't like, it takes a while for these things to spin down, and like there is some institutional momentum to them all. Look, I think in terms of what changes is like, I mean, I have so many conversations now with founders where like they come in pitching me a seed round, and they do what they think they're supposed to do, which is like, okay, when we do this, then this is what we're going to spend the money at the A. And like, I'm less interested in that. Like, how much money do you need now to build a super healthy scaling business with options associated with it? And like, most of them are like, haha, funny, and like kind of walk away. But a lot are like, interesting thought. Like, let me come back to you with some thinking on that, right? Like, that's a different pattern than we're used to. I think a lot more of those types of deals start happening. And I think that'll actually be a very healthy change in the ecosystem long term. Like, I think in the next 12 months, I will get more and more pitches of people who are like, I don't need $2.5 million to prove one statistic to try to Hail Mary an A. I actually need like 4 or 5. But on the other side of it, I should have a super healthy, profitable business, right? With a small team that's going to give me a ton of options about what I do. I
think the difference is though, like, because we're in this era where the trains are still going off the tracks, there could be more competition who see, oh, this like small business thing over here is working out. Like if I just raised like 10 million instead of 5, I can probably accelerate faster. And so like, I think a lot of early stage founders get really nervous because they are like constantly watching for the competition who's coming behind them. And if you can't raise more venture capital, theoretically, you can't accelerate as quickly.
But this is the funny thing. I think this is one of the lies of Silicon Valley is that, the number of companies that are actually killed by competition is so small, right? Like the story is, I need more money to and it happens. Like Uber, Lyft can slug each other to death. You know what I mean? Like there are places where this is true, but the number of places where companies die because of their own fuck ups, like companies die because they don't execute well. There's a lot of reasons companies die, but companies are almost never killed by direct competitors. It's like almost a lie of Silicon Valley to get them to take more money and spend it on ads to try to go faster, right? And so I actually just think healthier company growth will be a thing. And yes, of course, some founders will get suckered by that mentality still. And again, there are exceptions. There are places where you just plow money in and that's what you do. But I think, I just think the culture will shift. I think these things will change. The conversations will be different. How people think about raising money will be different. I am seeing more and more founders come to me with plans of I don't think we're going to need money again. And they probably know my shit, so they're telling me what I want to hear. But I also think it's genuine that people are starting to think about that and are going to think about it more.
Fascinating. Anyway, in the meantime, the train will go into the dirt, into the ocean, and maybe to the moon.
It's like in Indiana Jones. It's like the train blows through the end and just kind of plows through the dirt for a while.
Yeah, right? We need more graphic imagery in these things. I like it. So what else is cooking, guys? What else is capturing your attention? We've spoken on a previous pod about Mr. Evan Spiegel and the kind of founder.
I noticed that Evan Spiegel was, through the information article, was walking around his office late one night. I like how you guys wrote it. It was the end of the day and Evan Spiegel was walking around the office and he noticed that there were only a few people there still working, and he had an all hands the next day and demanded that people work harder.
Well, I think what he did, which is the way this happens, is
that always works.
Elon maybe demands it, but Evan just goes, Bob, Jane, they were in the office late. You know what? They're always in the office late. This is called the carrot, not the stick. I have an all hands tomorrow, so maybe I should try this. But apparently he's gone. His team is calling it full Elon, which I don't know exactly what that means or if we want to perpetuate that stereotype. But just really going, we've all done it. There are times you got to do it in your business. I don't know. What do you guys think? What's the sort of founder reasserting themselves? Good idea, bad idea?
Well, the founder reasserting themselves, good idea. Yeah. I think there's this interesting, it's almost like our hybrid work debate about which hours are you working is this second level question now, which is a lot of parents are well, I work until this time of day and then I have to pick up my kids and deal with my kids, but then I work again later in the day. And so I might not be at the office at 5. And is that okay? Is it not okay? And I think that's a really interesting debate going on right now. And I think Evan Spiegel's point is you should be in the office until, late at night. That's how we're all productive together.
I mean, the question is are you just beating the stone harder, or do you it's if you're going to get that's the question with something like Snap, right? Is it's cool to say, I mean, that people should work harder, but that's only if they're good and it's going to be good. There is an element of okay, is this just take out the whip and hit the stone harder and you're still going to get nothing, or if it actually matters.
Was it Zuck or Sundar who also called out the company for not working that hard at one point in the last year?
This has been a big theme. This has been part of the year of efficiency.
Because they're using AI to accelerate their roadmaps.
We have an episode called Why Hybrid Work Won't Work, right? But yes, I think that the reality is that the pandemic created this new category. It's kind of like the last argument. We have a lot of black and white dichotomous thinking, and it seems like evolutionary hybrid. There's a lot of stuff going on in this realm right now. And it's hard not to ignore.
Props to my mom, who had an interesting social media post that she probably wanted me to comment on, and I haven't. So, Mom, take this as the comment.
There you go. Get it on the pod.
She posted something that said, work from home has never been better for women to work in the workforce, but also made it never harder for them to advance in the workforce. And she was sort of posting this for someone else's opinion for commentary. And I found part of the reason I hadn't responded yet is I wanted to actually think about it. But I kind of feel like there's some.
What are the reasons that women can't advance? Because
isn't it everyone can't advance because you don't have FaceTime?
Parents. This wasn't like this person was probably a woman, which is why she posted it, right? But I think, and the data would show that it has been much harder for women to reach the executive ranks of American and global business. Mm-hmm. The data would show.
Just wait until they're all making bank in small businesses.
Great. Well, that's
what I'm helping them do. Just go to beselfmade.com.
But anyway, that seems like there was we had someone, I think like, I don't know, FaceTime still matters. And I think if we're sending the message that it doesn't, we're actually not. And not FaceTime from like kissing the boss's ring perspective, but to be able to coach people, develop them in their careers, have them see what the next level of their job looks like, see what they're struggling at, make them more effective.
What percent of people at like most tech companies do you think are working at 2/3 capacity because they're using AI to like get the rest of their work done? Do you think that's happening yet?
Oh my God. By the way, this week was the first time I was in a meeting, a very important work meeting. And somebody in the meeting definitely used AI to generate their work. And I called them out and they said,
"We've got to plug South Park."
And they said, "No, I didn't." And I'm like, next time you lie about using AI for your work, make sure you take out the token that says insert venture capital name here in the paragraph of the text at the bottom of the.
It's not a problem to use AI and it can accelerate your work. It's just like, are you honest about it? Are you telling, I don't know, like, and how many people are using that?
Think it's like, what work do you actually do where, like, there's like, some of it was like, sure, like marginally has this thing, but like, if you ever have a job where like AI can make you more efficient dramatically, your job is probably stupid.
It's like under threat for the next 2 years, but a lot of companies in normal America, Sam, don't even know what AI is right now.
I'm going to pull a Sam and say I got to run to the next meeting. Oh my gosh. So it's over to you, Brett. Okay. And, keep it going.
Okay, I got you. Okay, I got you. Bye. Stay on, everyone.
Seriously, like, what type of work would you say is like real?
They're literally marketing jobs they have to write ads, like I was mentioning before, and now they just use Google's ad product, and they don't have to write ads anymore.
I agree with that. They're not going to have a job doing that. In like
I know, but like for right now, they're doing it, and they're just like
for 3 months. Fine, they're going to for 3 months. They can.
I don't know. These middle America companies, I think, will not catch on to the AI stuff for a year or two.
The analogy that I was at an AI event in LA last week, and the analogy that I heard that I really liked was, farmers before they had tractors could only produce so much. The land that they were working could only produce so much output, right? And once the tractor and other agricultural tools became pervasive, the productivity of each piece of land went up dramatically. And so you can look at AI as like a tractor for skilled work. Like most of the work that was displaced or enhanced by the prior era, call it Web 2, call it whatever, MySQL databases and, queries and nice user interfaces on top of them, was mostly algorithmic, unskilled labor work that was enhanced by that. And you could argue, and we've used the analogy of AI being like a calculator for words or whatever you want to call it. It is this new tool that potentially is going to make skilled work dramatically higher output.
Maybe, but not necessarily better, richer. Like farmers are now poorer, not richer because of the tractor. Like farmers used to be richer. Right, like it was more like it's not.
What do you mean?
Like farming used to be more people, obviously employ more people. Just as you would argue, pre-AI, like there would be like more humans doing things, right? And like farmers, like with the exception of like the people who are effectively the Microsofts of farming, right, has become like a shit job, right? And so the reality, yeah, sure, your output is up. But like everyone's output is up and it's a competitive market. So actually your income is down.
But there was a period of time where those farmers whose output was up before the rest of the farmers probably made bank and could accelerate.
For like a second.
But it's a hot
but I think
minute.
that's and it's only ever a faster minute, right? Like I mean I just don't think that's like a sustainable thing. I just think there's going to be the type like, and the reality is, who still works in farms is like strawberry pickers, because it turns out you can't get a fucking machine to do it, and it's like terrible job, but people do it, right? And so I just think my basic point is like higher productivity doesn't actually make better jobs, right? It might make
I guess, Sam, that was like one of the things that I was trying to think about for our prior the conversation we were having earlier in the episode, is just this question of what does 20 years from now look like, right? Like I was sitting there at that event last week, and many people were coming up to me asking me if they should, a lot of them are book writers or musicians, and they're all asking like, should I be going home right now and creating a GPT? And I had this like vision of like millions of GPT owners, years from now, and like, what does that world look like? And
I don't think they should be. I think what they should be doing is building loyalty and brand and community, right? Like the GPT, like these things will be so pervasive, there's no value in them, right? Like they're just going to be all, it's like, but
it'll be just like millions of Facebook pages, same thing.
But you have to have one. It's like the thing where like it's commodity, but that means you have to have it, so you have to at least start sometime.
Yeah, but it's just like, I just don't think it's going to matter. Like, I think they'll be everywhere and be noise. I mean, the reality is people who are like, what the writers should be doing is building a rabid fan base around them and a specific niche that they own, where those people are going to trust them. They're going to want to hear from them. They're going to like care what their choice. Like,
I bring that up in the context more of a brand. Right. So I know a brand. It's like a food brand that has like a blog, and they're like people that write for the blog about like all the healthy food things for kids and like all this stuff. And they've been able to increase their output from like 4 articles a week to 10, which is like not that high, but for them it is. And through AI. And so they, they're just placed.
But everyone's going to do that.
But I'm just
saying,
there's
going to be no differentiation in that. I just don't think
they're getting more traffic because of it currently, because
for a hot second.
Well, it depends on how the algorithm. Like Google's algorithm will have to ultimately change, right? Because right now it favors content volume and output.
Totally. But it's just, there's a lot of things that you can have a hot moment displacement and do fine at, right? If you want to be the guy who races and puts out 10,000 articles rather than 10 and like edits them just enough that they think it's not AI, so then they rank you out. Like there are games to play. But from a fundamental perspective, like you're not going to win a content war when content is free, right? Yeah. Like, and like as a result, like the reality is like that is a tactic, not a long-term strategy. I think you have to prepare yourself for a world where like there's just pervasive content everywhere. There's pervasive GPTs everywhere. And it's, as a result, completely worthless to act. It's like table stakes. Like maybe you have to do it, but you're never going to make any margin. And it's more about where you
rank though in the Google search results, which is like the key source of traffic.
If that matters.
If that matters. But like right now it does. Like that's the number one source of traffic for most brands.
But that is like a very, as we know, rigged game that if your put differently, take like a BuzzFeed, right? Like they played a game for 10 years that was all about effectively ranking, feed ranking, and things like that. It's not a durable business model. Like you're always one click away from getting swiped when the algorithm changes.
I know.
Right? And
but like all recipes and like others, like it's there's so many sites on the internet.
Those are all shit businesses.
Like there are real businesses. Like there's this Face Gym business, right? Like who, if they rank high in SEO, like
that's a franchise that Sam and I are going to go invest in.
Your new contract.
Like what I say is the future of the franchise of that is like someone being like, okay, like I learned how to do this face thing and it's super cool, and I'm going to like go into my community and build human relationships with the customers, and all the people are going to love me at the school, and they're all going to come to my face thing. And the reality is like there's 1,000 other face things, but I'm the person they want to work with. It's not about like ranking high in SEO, because it's just
I'm not saying it's not about the community and brand element. I'm just saying SEO is a big part of it for a lot of brands right now. And like if you
that's fine. I just think if you're going to take that approach, just understand that it's not a strategy, it's a tactic, and you shouldn't expect it to last, right? So like if you're going to like go out and like rely on these things, like you should not build your brand with the expectation it'll be there tomorrow. And I think any brand that's built on a content strategy, which is based on ranking, just has to understand that like they're 1 second away from getting wiped out.
Yeah. And again, I'm not saying it's 100% based on a content strategy. I'm saying that strategy is a tactic, to your point, that helps them in one way, get the word out about who they are and attract traffic to their website, et cetera, et cetera. And so
I guess like one of the things that this is making me think is, are we going to see a chart in 10 years that basically shows the rise of bots and then the downfall of social media? And I know this is sort of a, like, will the voices mostly be bots and the social media,
this has been, I wrote a piece about this a while ago about how, like, if you think about the history of social media, the real story is it's just entertainment, right? Unfortunately,
it's just content.
If you think about it, like your friends were more entertaining than People Magazine, right? That's why early social won, because it turns out that like People Magazine is pretty bland and boring. Professional influencers are actually more entertaining than your friends because they're like fucking hotter and professionals. So like
they're professionals at being your friends. And Taylor Swift is the best parasocial, relationship 100%. Creator.
And then after that, the question is what beats the Kardashians, right? I read this like a year ago, and the answer is, in theory, it should be personalized bots, right? Where like I'd actually rather chat effectively with myself, right, than I would like in some like through an AI voice, right? Like than I would, because they can be personalized and like super, deeply. And now, so I think that actually like is the right direction, is to think about like the entertainment part of the future is going to be all bots. And it'd be super weird, right? It's going to be people like, there's a great old science fiction movie where these people fall in love with their own memories and they get addicted to them, and they're like wandering around in the desert and they're like stuck in their effectively with phones. This is before phones existed.
That's not a science fiction movie. That's most people's traumas.
Yeah, so like that is like that. I think is the question, is like, is that moderated by a bot? Is like really like it is narcissist all over again, right? And like the ultimate winner over influencers is going to be some weird reflected version of yourself that you're going to get deeply obsessed with, and like that's who you're going to hang out with, right?
Well, I had this like weird question after I built this GPT for us, which is, is like the future going to be this weird future where when I go to talk to you, Sam, and you're not available over text, like your bot just starts talking to me, and then I'm talking to like the bot version of you, and the bot version of you will talk to me about things that you like maybe are uncomfortable talking to me about, but do it as you, and like this, like what, like what?
I think the answer is, what's your goal? If the goal is entertainment or like self-revel, absolutely. You know what I mean? Like, I think like the whole like, oh, I can like revive dead relatives and talk to them will be super like entertaining or reflective from like it is actually a real thing, right? By my percent, but it's not going to be informational, right? It's not going to like the thing that doesn't give you that like real human networks gives you is like access. It can give you only content. It can't give you like you access capital or like access, social capital, or like there's like a whole economy of communication that I think that doesn't work for an action in the real world. But again, like it is interesting because the reality is the dream of social networking, what the internet can do, is really quite fractured into like the stuff that's actually financial social capital, like real actual exchange of human value, and then just entertainment. And the entertainment's way easier to think about and easier to monetize, right? So we think more about that. I think the question is what's happening in messengers, what's happening in groups and communities.
Yeah.
That's actually where economic value is, right? So when you say like what happens with these bots, I think the bots in the content wipes out all the entertainment stuff. Like that's just going to be noise, and like maybe it's an acquisition strategy, but it's not a business. All the business has to be on what's capital rich, and I think that will be small businesses and communities and relationships and things like that, right?
See, that's a way more interesting version of this conversation, I think, which is I've been thinking about this dichotomy as being like there's the story or the content maxis, like the people who believe that the story or the content is the thing that matters. And then the other side is like the people maxis or the network maxis. And that like largely where social media and the internet has gone is into this story world where like all the priorities on content ranking, story ranking, produce more story. And we've kind of lost the, social graph or people side of the equation. Yeah. And like, that's where all the value is. And I think that
totally
what I just heard from you is really powerful, that SMB is actually is like the buzzword way to talk about what we're talking about. But the real way to talk about what we're talking about is how do you build really dense networks of value around a small business that, people can then have a capitalistic enterprise and have a really vibrant sort of, business operation.
I think that's a super cool way to think about elevating it. And like, as we and I both know, I mean, like, I think one of the disappointments of the last 20 years in the internet is because it was super easy to measure engagement, right? And attention and monetize it. A lot of the interesting things around human capital and networks, right, kind of faded to the background in favor of like the button that was easy to hit, right? And the button that was easy to hit was just engagement and money and entertainment. And that's fine.
Story. And it was just like obsession with that.
But it's like that stuff is all like kind of bullshit. It's vapid. And the point is it's like it gets competed to zero, right? Like there is no sustainability to that, right? Whereas I do think this network stuff is really where value. I think I love your encapsulation. It's also, for what it's worth, why I'm like super interested in vertical creators that build those communities in their niches, and like people love them and care about them. I am much less interested in generic influencers, and that's everything from the Kardashians to like Mr. Beast. I totally get it. Lots of distribution, I just don't think it's durable, right? Because all it is content, right? And like that is ultimately very replaceable.
Yeah, I think it's easy to hear what you're saying and what we've been talking about over several episodes as like that niche creator is just creating content and they're creating story. And if you're a story centric thinker, a story maxi, like you can hear what you're saying in that way rather than hearing the other thing, which is that actually it's the community of people really focused on this area that is the real value. And I think that's it's kind of a subtle thing to tease apart to understand about this, because I think if you're just thinking about story, like AI and all this stuff is just going to like infinitely generate stuff in that realm, and it won't in the network connectivity community side. And
I gotta play the moderator role. Sorry, just stepped out, but I think this was like a good place to land. I feel like we came full circle here. We sort of.
Did Sam have a final point? He seemed
Sam,
like
would you like
did.
to express that?
No. I was gonna say this was fun. I mean, this is why I like doing this with you guys, because I feel like we get on and talk about some stuff and end up actually getting to like better encapsulations of our own thinking.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming on the journey with us, more or less listeners.
Yeah.
And don't build fucking content farms. Eat GPT, otherwise you're gonna lose all your money.
Yeah, I think that. But
exactly.
small businesses and creators will succeed if you don't build content businesses. I think that's the encapsulation.
Build a network.
And if you're gonna do content, just understand it's like a 3-month game. You're fucked. Like, use it while it's hot. Get over it.
Use it while it's hot.
Build community.
Love it.
Build community.
Thank you guys. Next week, by the way, everybody, we have a special episode coming to you the day before Thanksgiving, or the day after Thanksgiving, because it's Thanksgiving week. So stay tuned for that episode.
What is it? I don't even know.
We have pre-recorded an interview with a couple of special guests. What? It was the men weren't there. Sorry about that. It's a female interviewee, actually 2 of them on the episode, and it is really, really interesting.
Well, Dave, that just means you and I need to find 2 white men.
But we are grateful in the spirit.
Where will we possibly find 2 white men?
In the spirit of Thanksgiving, we are grateful for our audience who's come with us on this journey and who continues to listen. So please rate, review, share this, especially share this episode with others that you know in the small business zone, because hopefully it'll help them think through some of their tactics.
And we love hearing from you guys. I heard last week so many people came up to me and were referencing different conversations, and every time that you do, whether it's text message or a phone call or coming up to us anywhere, it helps make.
And can we
better,
share our GPT with them? How are we going to do that? In our show notes? Okay. Check out.
It'll be in the show notes.
But just make sure we collect email addresses, because this is content. We need
yeah, you remember? We got to leverage our content while it lasts, Dave.
Ooh, good call, Sam.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sam.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this show, please leave us a virtual high five by rating it and reviewing it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Find more information about each episode in the show notes, and follow us on social media by searching for @MoreOrLess, @DaveMorin, @Lesson, @JLesson, and as for me, I'm @Brit. See you guys next time.